we now want to shift gears and talk about the WTO conference, which was happening in Nairobi since last week and actually came to an end on Saturday. We are now joined by Ambassador Kelly Kilu from the East Africa Business Council. Many thanks for joining us on KTN.
Thank you.
And Mr. Kelly, you attended this particular WTO conference. I remember we used to meet quite a number of times. But first things first, a number of people don't really understand what EABC is all about, and how is it that you managed to get to this particular conference and be one of the key participants?
Thank you very much. The East African Business Council is the umbrella body, the apex body of the private sector in East Africa. It was established in 1998 with headquarters in Arusha.
Yes.
When the Treaty of the EAC was rolled out in 1999, within the treaty under Articles 5 to 7, it says is people-centered. The EAC is people-centered,
yeah,
and the private sector driven.
Yes.
Now, therefore, the people-centered aspect, there are what we call civil societies, and they have their own structures.
Yeah.
Then the private sector is the private sector driven element, which means the private sector is led by the umbrella body or the apex body. Within the 5 partner states of the EAC, the East African Business Council therefore has focal points. Like in Kenya, we have the Kenya Private Sector Alliance, which then is the apex body of the private sector organizations in Kenya. And each country, therefore, we have a similar institution. The headquarters is in Arusha. We have members in the board representing the various partner states of the EAC. And in that forum, we actually engage with the public sector in terms of creating an enabling environment for the business to operate, and particularly in policies and regulations that will determine how the East African community will be fast-tracked in its integration process.
And Mr. Kelly, looking at the WTO, what would you say? Was it a successful conference?
Yes, I know there's been a lot of comments, and the way you look at it from a global point of view, first of all, with globalization, you need WTO.
Yeah.
Because global trade, taking cognizance of the various institutions that represent different continents, different regions, even within the continent.
Yes.
For example, here we have 8 regional trade organizations.
Yes.
Okay. Therefore, like the EAC, we have trade blocks.
Yeah.
We have COMESA, we have
SADC,
SADC, we have West Africa, we have North Africa.
Yeah.
You see, and we have the Horn of Africa. Now, other continents have similar institutions, and they have different approaches to how to engage in terms of inter-regional trade, inter-global trade. So for global trade, we have to take cognizance of dynamic changes in the world. And because the world has now become one village, we also have to address where we have issues in relation to how do we facilitate for that trade moves fast, how do we enable equal terms in terms of engaging, because we have developed economies, we have growing economies, and then we have the LDCs, the least developed countries. All of them are part of the globe. So how do we recognize, unless you have a body like WTO, how do we then have a forum where you can address the challenges facing all these economies, and therefore we harmonize global trade?
Of course, Kilu, one of the biggest outcomes of this particular conference was that agricultural subsidies, and the other one was on ICT tariffs. How does this fit into the Kenyan scenario? Did Kenya, can Kenya actually say, yes, we've got something out of this conference from these two areas?
Definitely, because Whereas Kenya is a medium income economy, it's not at the level, the LDCs are the ones who benefited most. But you see, in the scheme of things, obviously Kenya, as they rectify the decisions, you'll find there'll be multiply impact on Kenya, okay? Because if we are looking at the Kenyan economy in agriculture,
Yes.
we are in a flour industry, big for exports.
Yeah.
We're also in tea and coffee
Yes.
for exports, right?
Yeah.
So we can't say we are not going to be benefiting, whereas we also are in commercial farming. There are those LDCs who have no commercial farming benefits at all.
That's true.
But here, we are growing to the level where agriculture becomes a commercial farming. Again, you have to look at the blue economy, because we tend to look at agriculture and forget the blue economy.
Yeah.
Which is also, very important, because we have a long coastline.
Yes.
Where we have access to a lot of, seafood, which we can also turn into commercial. And we have, but not in a manner that it should be at a level like in the developed countries, like if you go to the Far East, to Japan or Singapore,
Yeah.
or Korea, where they really benefit heavily on the blue economy. Then if you look at the other aspect, value addition in where we look at animals, we have a lot of livestock. What are we doing about it? Like people, why should we be buying goods made out of value addition in livestock,
Yeah.
like leather, when we can do it here?
Correct.
Yeah, instead of buying from other developed countries or where they have a similar livestock industry, but we are not adding value in ours. That's what we are looking at. Therefore, at the end of the day, once it's rationalized, there will be value addition, definitely.
And Mr. Kelu, if you are to count perhaps some of the biggest benefits, actual benefits to the Kenyan farmers, what would they be out of this conference? If you can kindly walk us through.
One of them is that allowing tariffs, non-tariff barriers to appear, and tariff barriers. There are two, non-tariff and there are tariff barriers, which are deliberately affected. Then the goods that support to the farmers in the developed economies, where the farmers are actually given support. When you give them support, how do you compete with them? So when you remove that, then you bring down the level of, of competition, because therefore we are able to compete at par, per se, because you have removed the barriers of trade, which must be removed. You must also facilitate, trade facilitation is very important, because without trade facilitation, you can't do much, right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, remove that support to the farmers in the developed countries, which it has been agreed they will. Now it's about the time. Of course, the decision said 3 years. So we hope by the end of 3 years, we'll be talking of a different engagement model. Right.
And the other thing, of course, that I'd like to get your position on is, as the private sector, were there other areas that you had hoped that they would come to a consensus on, that you felt they didn't really come up?
In international negotiations, even in our own regional ones, even here in East Africa, each party goes with their team, with their package.
Yes.
But then it is what the outcome of the negotiations are that at the end of the day matters. Because if the spirit is to, at the end of the day, come up with a unity of purpose and a decision is made, which like happened here. Those 5 days we were there. A lot was discussed. A lot was, you were there also. A lot was, expected. But you see, decisions depend on harmony.
Were there some particular areas that
because like that one of
private
agriculture,
sector
the agriculture one was positive, very positive. And
Do you
the
think there are some
facilitation, and also
areas
removal of those tariffs which have been blocking our exports, making it difficult to export to those countries, or also importing goods that are already in this market, which we can make, because also technologically there has been also, Kenya has developed heavily. The economy of Kenya has a lot of propensity. Therefore, if you look at what was 10 years ago not available here is available. Therefore, all those aspects are looked at, yeah.
Ambassador Kilu, before we let you go, now that the dust has settled after the WTO, what is the way forward?
No, it's until they have finalized, you know, this was the negotiations. They have made a statement, this is what we have agreed we'll do. Then there is what you call agreements, either bilateral, okay, which are made either between countries, that's bilateral, or multilateral, where you have regional trade blocks. They come in, and if you remember, in the discussions, we had different blocks. The Africa bloc met, then the regional trade blocks met, then the continental blocks, okay? And again, like here, we also have a continental free trade area being launched in Africa. We already started the process from 2014. So by 2017, we have to take cognizance of all this and then harmonize. And because until they have ratified, the decisions that were made have to be ratified, then the way forward. But they have given 3 years to implement, which is a very big step from the last time the negotiations were made. I would say it was very positive.
Many thanks, Ambassador Kelly Kilu, joining us to discuss this important subject about the WTO and what did it really mean for Africa and, to be precise, for Kenya. Thank you, and it's always a pleasure to have you in studio.
Anytime. Thank you very much indeed.
And we wish you Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Same to you.
Well, we want to take a quick commercial break. After that, we'll be speaking to Washira from CIC Insurance to give us industry perspectives on what's been happening in the insurance business and what does it take for you to get an insurance cover. Don't go too far. We'll take a quick commercial break.